It's been just over a year since longtime CJAD contributor and founder of the Montreal community contact newspaper, Egbert Gaye, sadly passed away. How is his legacy being carried on since his passing? In to discuss this with us today is Pat Dillon, broadcaster at CKUT Radio and host of Bhum Bhum Time. Thank you so much for joining us. And I must say I'm accustomed to addressing you respectfully as Auntie Pat. Thank you so much for joining us.
You and the almost entire Montreal community, including my Irish 76-year-old neighbor.
There we go. There we go. You inspire respect and honor everywhere you go. And that makes you not so different, of course, from Egbert himself. Can you just give us a brief overview of how you knew him and how you worked with him over the years?
I live on, not now, but growing up in NDG, I lived on Addington above Sherbrooke. And around the time of his son's birth, he lived on Jail Ward and Sherbrooke. And so these are the people in your neighborhood. Fast forward to when he opened the newspaper, I myself being in media, for sure there was a natural synergy and interest. And the Caribbean community, although if you look at a StatsCan report, we are quite large in number. It really isn't all that big, especially if you're concentrated in various neighborhoods. So we were always invariably at many of the same events. And when I'd be covering things, then in the early 90s as station manager of CKUT Radio and him as publisher of Community Contact, there were many things that we discussed right up until his death. And I think he did not do that with only me. I think everybody that he was with, including manager and cashiers at Esposito on Sherbrooke Street, he carried all that he knew with him and exposed people. So it was always give and share. It is really what living is in Montreal. And it's one of the uniqueness of Montreal in that as much as, yes, our politics divide us, we still live with, at any given time, all sorts of cultural communities, including the larger Quebecois population.
And Pat Dillon, Egbert worked so hard for his community. I mean, the amount of hours he put in, I think as someone who works in media, was so impressive. To run newspaper almost single-handedly, doing everything up the chain. No job was beneath Egbert. He just did everything. Talk about sort of the daily grind that Egbert put into this job.
Well, I can go back to COVID. And, for sure above Sherbrooke and Wilson, the contact offices, that really was a cultural hub where everybody, certainly students starting out in media and suppliers wanting to buy ads, and alongside his son who grew up in the newspaper office, they would typeset, they would write articles, he would edit articles, he would be out at events taking pictures. And then he would be distributing the papers. And when there was anything newsworthy within the community, a significant birth, an important milestone, or a death, he was there and part of it. It really is about living in community and having your alternative media personalities in the midst with you. So, for instance, my last daughter's birth, he was in the christening because that's how he practiced journalism. So therefore, when he has to interview you, he's moving from a place of trust, particularly with the people he knew intimately well.
Yes, and I can attest to that personally because I know Egbert was always there at every event in the Black community. Anyone in the community who did well, he was there to cover them and make sure their story was told to the larger community through community contact, which is how I first met him as a child. And, anytime I accomplished anything halfway impressive, my mom was always saying, get in touch with Egbert, make sure it's in the contact, the community needs to know. And he was always there. He's one of the pillars who always practically carry the community on
And
their
I want
shoulders.
to add something to that because an important conversation is happening right now within the community. When we as community, however you define community, do not do something well, and there is dissension and great passion, he was there as well. And he had a very strong opinion. And not everybody agreed with him. But you always knew that you can disagree with him. And that includes people like Noel Alexander and Dan Phillip as well. And some of our living legends as well and community stakeholders, the older branch, that you could fight, argue, and cuss. But no, once that was over, you pick up back where you left off.
Yes.
And there was that great respect. There was an understanding of relationships sometimes include divergent views.
Absolutely. And even I had a disagreement or two with Egbert
Oh, God,
over the
you
years.
think could you imagine me and him cuss all the while? Me and him didn't agree on very much. Like, if you think him and Tommy Sturmacher used to get into it, you wanted to hear some of our conversations.
But that's the thing. He was one of those people, like you say, who always got that just because you disagree doesn't mean you had to be disrespectful to one another on a personal level. And so when it comes to his legacy, what do you have to say about how his shoes are being filled, how his mission is being carried on since he left us?
Well, I do know that almost it feels like 2.5 months, if that, after his passing, the urgency was to get the paper out. And I'm pleased to say that there are many people who ensure they are there to support Elizabeth and the new publisher now, his son Emar Mitchell, to get the paper out. And we are all doing what we can to keep that paper going because it is important. Yes, we have social media. Yes, there's a 24-hour news cycle where at any minute everybody could press a button, say what they have to say. It does not mean that it has passed through rigorous journalist standard. And so it was very important to keep the paper alive because of what it was, or what it is rather, a newspaper. But more importantly, I don't think that you get into community, build something, put your heart, soul, and whole into it for it to crumple up and die when you leave this earthly space. And so I guess his legacy is to show us that whatever you do, whatever you're into, if you're a musician, if you are a painter, if you are a writer, a media person, that whatever you're building now, especially we throw around these terms like we're doing it for the youth, right? That you understand legacy and succession. And I'm not sure if Egbert would have had conversations with his family, should anything happen to me, hey darling, you know, in his wonderful Trini Brogue.
Yes.
But I think the family, more importantly, who I take my hats off because I think more so than celebrities on TV, I now understand what it is to lose someone and have to grieve in an adoring public's eyes, right?
Yes.
I think they understood that his legacy is giving youth an opportunity to write, allowing community to speak for itself, and giving them a platform that does not belong to IG or TikTok or Facebook.
Indeed.
That we have our own, the original FUBU, for us, by us. And us includes the greater Montreal community because the Black Caribbean and African community do not live in a vacuum.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pat Dillon, for joining us and discussing Egbert's legacy with us. Much appreciated.
Thank you for doing this. And I like the duo of you and Dan Delmar. I mean, Aaron, I love you. Aaron, you know I love you. But hey, let's make some spaces for these new little relationships Take
Thanks.
care.
Thanks
Walk
very
good,
much, Pat.
Montreal. Walk
Will
good.
do. Thanks.
Thanks. Love that piece of wisdom. And by the way, if you do want to support Montreal Community Contact, go to their website, mtlcommunitycontact.com. It's Egbert's family that's still running this fabulous paper. And especially in this new media environment, all of that content often gets wasted on social media. Like Pat was saying, go to the source, right? So mtlcommunitycontact.com. You can join the newsletter, and that way you're supporting them directly instead of through Facebook or Twitter or whatnot.